My husband calls me fat, controls all of our money, refuses therapy, holds every need over my head, spends his days smoking and gaming, belittles me, and treats me like I'm the villain when I push back. I'm secretly planning my escape, and now, when I look back now, I can admit that my marriage didn't start with the kind of fairy tale foundation I had once dreamed of. If I'm being brutally honest with myself, it didn't even start with a real choice of mine, not fully. It felt more like momentum. Like we'd been together for years, and marriage was just the next box to tick, the next step to make everything look right from the outside. I was 28 when we married, and he was 34. We'd already been together 6 years by that point, 2 of those living like we were married anyway. He had his quirks, his flaws, more than a few red flags if I'm honest, but I was in love. Or, at least, I was clinging to the version of him I believed in. The version I thought I could coax out if I just stayed patient, forgiving, supportive. I told myself that love means choosing the good even when it's hard, and I wanted so badly to prove to myself, to my family, to my child, that this marriage would work. And here's where it started to unravel before it even began. I wanted a wedding. Not just a piece of paper. Not just an elopement in front of a judge. I wanted the moment. The dress, the vows, the celebration with friends and family. My first marriage, a rushed, military-type arrangement in my early 20s, was nothing like that, and deep down I'd always felt robbed of that experience. This was supposed to be my second chance. We even started planning. I remember reaching out to venues, scribbling names of caterers, researching photographers. My Pinterest board was overflowing with inspiration. For a brief moment, I was so excited, like a kid planning their dream birthday party. Then, out of nowhere, he shut it down. "It's too much money," he said. "Why spend that when we could just keep it simple?" Now, he wasn't struggling financially at that time. He had a business, and from the outside, it looked like it was doing well. But he had this fixation on appearances. He was constantly chasing the next big purchase, constantly throwing money into keeping up with other people, friends, colleagues, acquaintances. A new gadget here, a flashy dinner there, the newest car upgrade just so he could brag. And yet, when it came to something as meaningful as our wedding, suddenly, it was too expensive. And me? I folded. I swallowed my disappointment because I wanted to keep the peace. Because I wanted to be married to him, and if that meant sacrificing the wedding of my dreams, then so be it. I told myself, the marriage is what matters, not the party. So, we eloped. Just the 2 of us, signing papers, exchanging quick vows. He promised, with a smile, with the kind of convincing tone he knew worked on me, that we'd have the real wedding in a few years. That this was just the first step. That we'd celebrate later, properly, with everyone. He promised we'd plan a wedding for a few years from now. Insert eye roll here. That obviously has not happened, and will never happen. For a while, things almost seemed like they were smoothing out. Or maybe that's just what I told myself. I kept ignoring the little cracks, the nagging red flags, because I wanted to believe we were moving forward. I wanted to believe that marriage meant working through things, even if it meant burying my own frustrations so deep they didn't see daylight. About a year after we got married, I made a decision I thought would strengthen us as a couple. He had been complaining for months about money, specifically about me not making enough. At the time, I was working for his parents. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady, flexible, and it allowed me to balance everything else on my plate, raising my child, cooking, cleaning, managing the house. But according to him, it wasn't enough. He'd throw it at me like a dart. "You need to contribute more. You can't just coast. You should be doing more than this." So I listened. I swallowed down the sting of his words, ignored the fact that I was already pulling more than my fair share in invisible labor, and decided to do something drastic. I went into the trades. Construction. Hard work. Long hours. A male-dominated industry. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. For the first time in years, I felt proud of what I was doing. I was making good money, bringing in a real paycheck, and get this, I was covering health insurance for all of us, because up to this point he had flat out refused to do it. It felt like I was stepping into my power, contributing in every possible way he had asked me to. But instead of pride, instead of appreciation, do you know what I got? Complaints. He didn't like the hours. He didn't like that I was tired. He didn't like that he didn't see me as much. He wanted me to contribute more, and then when I did, he wanted me home. And the worst part? He didn't even try to hide the jealousy that ate at him every time I spoke about my day. Because, you see, all of my coworkers were men. Of course they were. It's construction. It's not like I got to hand select who was on the job site with me. But every time I'd share something about my day, a funny story, a moment of teamwork, anything, his face would sour. I don't want to hear about your day if all you're going to do is talk about other men, he'd snap. I'd stare at him, dumbfounded. I'm telling you about work. Who else am I supposed to talk about? They're my coworkers. And then the kicker. How would you feel if I came home and told you about all the women I spend my day with? That's when I really lost it. If you worked in a woman-dominated field, then of course you'd be working with women. That's not the point. It's the nature of the job. It didn't matter how logical I was, how calmly, or sometimes not so calmly, I explained it. In his head, me working alongside men was the same as me being unfaithful. He couldn't, or wouldn't, separate reality from his insecurity. And I'll admit it, I gave in again. I left that job, the one I loved, the one that gave me pride, the one that finally made me feel like I was building something of my own. I walked away because his jealousy poisoned everything, and I thought giving it up would give us peace. So, I went back to working with his parents. I shrank myself back down into the role he was comfortable with, and surprise, surprise, he calmed down. Not because things were better, but because I had once again bent myself into the shape he demanded. Now, remember the health insurance I mentioned?
Yeah.
Here's the cherry on top. He had always refused to get us proper insurance, insisting it was too expensive. His big idea? We just pay out of pocket whenever we needed something. Except when it came time to actually do that, when real medical needs came up, when it was time to put his money where his mouth was, he refused. Suddenly, all those big claims about, we'll just pay for it, vanished into thin air. He wouldn't do it. He left me holding that responsibility, like he left me holding so many others. Anyway, after leaving that job, the one I loved, the one that made me feel like I had purpose, I slipped into a very severe, depressive state. It was like the life just drained out of me. I didn't want to do anything, didn't want to get out of bed, didn't want to face the world. But I forced myself to keep working because if I didn't, I knew I wouldn't hear the end of it. His words, his judgments, his endless critiques would come crashing down on me. So I kept moving, even though inside, I felt like I was collapsing. And during this dark period, another incident happened, this time involving my child and his parents. I won't get into the specifics because that's a whole mess of its own, but I'll just say this. I finally stood up for myself and, more importantly, for my child. I drew a line in the sand and said enough was enough. Do you know what my husband did? He folded. He stood there and told me he couldn't get involved because it's his parents. That sentence cut me to my core. My child needed me. Our family needed me to protect them. And instead of standing beside me like a partner should, he chose loyalty to his parents over us. That betrayal is something I'll never forget. Of course, that meant I walked away from working with his family again. Another thing lost. Another reset. Another piece of me chipped away. He acted understanding on the surface, pretended like he had no issue with my decision. But I could feel it in the air, that unspoken disapproval. And then, when I finally started to lift myself back up and decided to go back to school to pursue something meaningful, something for myself, suddenly he had opinions again. Not supportive ones. Not the kind of encouragement you'd expect from a husband who claims he wants you to succeed. More like judgment disguised as advice. I pushed forward anyway because I knew if I didn't do something for me, I'd never survive this cycle. Now fast forward to the present. Let's talk about that so-called successful business of his. The one he used to flaunt, as if it were a golden ticket.
Gone. Completely gone.
Do you know why? Because he was playing a dangerous game, robbing Peter to pay Paul, funneling money where it didn't belong just to keep up appearances. He wanted to look successful, not be successful. He admitted later that he made a lot of mistakes, that he had mismanaged things. And in his desperation, do you know what he did? He turned to me. He asked me to open a new, similar business in my name. I told him no. Flat out no. I knew where this was headed. I knew he hadn't learned from the first round of mistakes. But he pressed. He begged. He guilt-tripped me into agreeing, made me feel like if I didn't do this, I was abandoning him. I finally caved, but I told him, crystal clear, if things started going south, I was done. I would pull out, and he would be on his own. And I meant it.
So here we are now.
I'm not working at this exact moment, and for once, he says he's okay with this. He says he wants to provide for us, to carry the weight while I'm in school. Sounds nice, right? Sounds like what a husband should want. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. I have no access to money. None. I don't know what we have, what we don't have, how much is coming in, or how much is going out. He refuses to give me access. His line? I'll handle the finances. I'll take care of it. Except that means I have to ask for everything. If I need groceries, if I need gas, if the kids need something for school, I have to ask. And when I ask, magically, he doesn't have it. The wallet dries up. The excuses pile on. But then, like clockwork, he'll have cash for the dispensary. Because he's a habitual smoker, 3 times a day at least. Every single day. Somehow, there's always money for weed. Somehow, there's always money for the things he wants. With all of this, there are still more layers of issues that I've barely even touched on. The name-calling, the constant belittling, the cruel little digs that chip away at me until I start to believe them myself. I've been called fat more times than I can count, not because I've drastically changed, but because I couldn't afford a gym membership on my own. And when he finally said he'd cover it, that so-called gift became yet another weapon. Every single day, he reminds me that he's paying for it, that I should be grateful, that without him I'd be nothing. And the passive aggressiveness, it's constant. Always little comments, side eyes, the sighs, the silent treatments that last for days. His moods swing like a pendulum, and it's always when he's sober. That's when the storm hits. It's mental and emotional abuse in waves. One moment cold indifference, the next a barrage of insults and criticism. And I've reached the point where I can't just swallow it anymore. I've started giving it back, matching his tone, throwing the words right back at him. Which, of course, immediately makes me the mean one. Suddenly, I'm the villain. I'm the problem. He twists it so seamlessly that sometimes I almost believe it. I've stopped starting conversations altogether. Because why bother? Every attempt at connection, at communication, just spirals into an argument. And intimacy? It's practically non-existent. He says he's always too tired. We don't have affection. We don't even have touch. The only time he reaches out is when he's trying to rile me up, poke at me in some twisted attempt to get a reaction. Our lives have become parallel but separate. He spends most of his free time glued to his phone, playing games, laughing with his online friends. I sit next to him reading, my one escape, and somehow that's my fault too. According to him, I'm the reason we don't connect, because I have the audacity to read while he's tuned out of our marriage completely. The gaslighting is endless. And the money, oh, the money. It's another chain. Anything I need, shoes, clothes, hair products, even basic personal necessities, becomes leverage. If he pays for it, he holds it over my head like a trophy he bought. And now, it's escalated to threats. He told me he'll turn off my phone because I blocked him. I blocked him after he wouldn't stop cussing me out over text for daring to bring up school-related expenses that needed to be covered. We've never tried therapy because, in his words, therapy is bullshit. He refuses to pay for it, refuses to even entertain the idea. Anytime I bring it up, it explodes into yet another argument where I'm painted as dramatic or weak for suggesting we need help.
So I've stopped asking.
Stopped hoping. Stopped dreaming of the day he might want to fight for us the way I once did. And the truth is, I'm alone. Completely and utterly alone. I don't have family nearby. I don't have friends I can lean on. That's by design, of course. He needs to know where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing at all times. If I don't report in, he accuses me of cheating.
So here I am.
Planning in secret. Quietly hoarding money when I can, buying little things here and there, and tucking them away.
Saving.
Preparing. Because I know I cannot keep living like this forever. My plan is to finish school just under 2 years, and then leave. Walk away for good. I'm not in a situation where I fear for my life or my child's life. If I were, I'd already be gone. But the emotional and mental toll? It's unbearable. And I can't keep sacrificing myself on this altar of a marriage that doesn't exist anymore. The question that keeps me up at night is this: would I be considered an asshole for planning my escape now, even though I won't act on it until I'm stable? Is it wrong to squirrel away money, to quietly prepare, to build a safety net he'll never see coming? Part of me feels guilty, like I'm betraying him in some way. But the other part? The louder part? That part doesn't care anymore. That part is tired of the BS, tired of the constant abuse, tired of begging for scraps of affection and respect. That part is ready to say F you and walk out with my head held high the moment I have the chance.